the simplest solution to having to deal with this was the chamber pot. And these were just simple pots to, usually kept in your chambers, hence chamber pot. And if you were wealthy enough, you could afford a close stool, which basically was a chamber pot inside a chest with a hole on top, and you could decorate it, and it was a little bit more discreet. In the morning, the chambermaids, if you had one, or you, if you were poor, would throw it out the window into the street. Hopefully, if you were polite, yelling "Gardy Lou," because that roughly means "watch out for the water" in French.
Are you serious?
I am serious, and you can.
Hence the yes.
Yes, we're gonna get into that too.
And
so,
high heels. It's the other reason.
Well, yep,
Yeah.
that too. I think I got it covered. So in 1565, Queen Elizabeth commissioned 4 really elaborate stools with velvet and satin, which actually scarlet. I'm sorry, scarlet was actually considered a type of cloth, not necessarily red. And she would go, well, on her progresses, she actually had a close carriage. So she would carry her close stool with her, at least one. I always wondered what they did on road trips. So here's some examples of the chamber pots and the close stool. So, yeah, think about it. From the time there's been humans, we've had to figure out what to do with this stuff, Okay, so castles and manors would build closets called privies or garderobes, and basically they just had their privies hanging out over the walls of the house, and it would come down the house, it would drain into sewers, which would then be swept away by either the city guard or people called rakers. Except on Sundays, because Sunday it was mandatory by law, you had to go to church and keep the Sabbath, so the streets weren't cleaned on Sunday.
That's really hard to think about.
I'm going to skip over that. It's telling a servant how to stand by with the towel and the linen and make put the cushions on. Okay, so actually there was a flushing toilet invented. The Queen's nephew even. And there was one installed in the castle at Richmond, but it didn't catch on. And I think I remember reading that the Queen didn't like the noise, but I'm not sure. So urine, as Jada had kind of mentioned on her presentation, urine was considered diagnostic, and there was actually a color wheel that I found with, it had all these little, tubes, holding, flasks holding different colored urine, and it told what humor was out of whack. It was also considered a disinfectant, and it was also used by the tanners. And so the poor people would sell urine, and they would actually collect it and sell their urine to the tanners, unless you were too poor to have a pot to piss in, which they didn't.
Too poor.
How funny.
Someone's gonna use that phrase. Like, oh, I'm too poor to have a pot to piss in.
That is a real phrase, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
You've never heard it. Like, no
Absolutely.
applesauce.
I'm bringing that phrase back.
Okay, so there was a medical expert named Andrew Wood who wrote a lot of manuals. One of them was Dietary of Health, and this was just, beware of pissage in draughts and blah, 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 so that to help people that were looking for a house. They really believed that foul odor caused disease. Also, why that doctor, would wear the beak stuffed with stuff. And so, the wealthier could afford to find a place away from the fouler areas of the city. Okay, so defecation. Public toilets existed. There was about 16 of them in the city, usually over water, and usually a lot of times on bridges. There's actually a hospital report of a baby that had been born in the Jakes, which was their word for their outdoor toilets.
Oh my God.
Cesspits were built in people's cellars, which was incredibly surprising. There was a journal written by a man who was really upset because he walked down to use his facilities and he stepped in a turd from his neighbor's house because it had overflowed into his cellar. Yes. Isn't this a fun topic? So sometimes the houses were being so close together, they would secure a plank going between the two houses, and that would be a makeshift latrine. I'm sorry, I cannot imagine a lady, well, actually, the lady probably wouldn't, it would be a poor person, but even they had lots of layers. I can't even imagine balancing on a board
How
and
do you
trying
go
to
to the bathroom in them?
It's challenging even today. I can't even imagine trying to squat over a chamber pot, which they would do. I mean, there would be people carrying on conversations, and there would be somebody using the chamber pot in the room, which is why it was impolite to talk to somebody who was doing that business. Some people made their living cleaning cesspits and privies and whatnot. This was a really dangerous job. There was an account of a man who actually drowned. He fell in and he drowned.
Yeah.
Yes. The fumes were toxic, and they would use children to sometimes get into the smaller areas. It was really bad. They also had this belief that the night air was dangerous, and they would seal up their houses. Some people would not wake up in the morning because they would asphyxiate from the fumes.
Oh, that's just
See, this is why I'm saying, I'm amazed anybody made it out alive between the risk of fire, disease, noxious fumes. I don't know how they did it. So this was just a copy, an example of a couple of the cesspits that those guys, yes, thank you, are digging up. I found an article that was actually written this May, but it was referring to an announcement last April, where a year ago, April, where they started digging up Shakespeare's cesspit. And they hadn't found anything interesting yet. They weren't even sure if it was actually his or his servants. They just found some shards of jugs and some buttons and stuff. But they were hopeful that, now that they were evacuating on his property, they would find stuff. No pun intended. Okay, so that brings me to the littlest guys, diapers. If you were lucky, you were born a royal, because you would have your nappy changed at least once a day. If not, it could be 3 or 4 days before you were changed. I don't know how these babies were screaming all the time. If you're not a mom, diaper rashes are a really bad thing, and it doesn't take long to create one. So I don't even know. And they basically didn't clean them very well. They would sprinkle wormwood powder or some other thing on them because they didn't want to bathe them because, well, I'll get into bathing after. So, yeah. Also, because urine was considered a disinfectant, they would just kind of hang them up to dry and then reapply. Okay, so some miscellaneous things in some of the manuals that I found. It was really not cool to fart in front of people. There was the Earl of Oxford was greeting Queen Elizabeth, and he bent over to kiss her ring, and he let loose with a apparently impressive fart. And he was so mortified, he was not seen in court for 7 years. 7 years. So he worked up courage to go, and it's like maybe she's forgotten right now, and she greeted him very graciously, and she said, "My lord, I had forgotten the fart." Which is, I think, funny.
That's cute.
I guess she has a sense of humor. Okay, so another great topic, menstruation. Hey, McKnight isn't here, because I was going to apologize. I'm not sure your name, but sorry.
He doesn't want anybody to know his name because of his outfit.
I love that outfit. That's way cool.
Yeah.
You're spiffy.
That's awesome.
That's a great outfit.
Okay, so the thing about clothing is that the ladies' breeches they had their original, I'm not going to show anything, the original crotchless breechers or bloomers. It was just way too hard, and trust me it is, to try to navigate everything and hold, So they had no crotches, and the royal women basically sat around during that time on special cushions. The women also had one petticoat that was devoted to that time of the month, and it was a darker color, and so that helped. And there's evidence of pinholes in some of the corsets at just the right area where they think possibly, some of the women had used, some kind of a rag like that. And then there's also accounts of using kind of the original tampons of wool or cheesecloth, cotton, and they would tie a string, and then they were fearful that it would be,
sucked into their body, never seen again, so they would actually tie a string around their thigh as well.